Have you ever felt like the woman you fell in love with was never really there? Like you weren't loving a person, but a shadow your own mind created? It's not that she lied. It's not that you were blind. It's that your unconscious wanted her to be something she never was, and you needed her to be that thing. Carl Jung had a word for this: projection. But he didn't use it lightly. He saw it as one of the most destructive and seductive forces in the male psyche. Because when a man doesn't know himself, he doesn't fall in love with a woman. He falls in love with his own missing pieces. Dressed in her face, this isn't romantic, it's devastating. Because what you're truly chasing isn't her. It's the illusion she reflects back to you. Let's get honest. You've met her before. The mysterious woman who seems to see you, who awakens something ancient, wordless, and beautiful in you. You can't explain it. You just know you'd give anything to keep that feeling alive. But that feeling, it has nothing to do with her. That's your anima, the feminine within you, a part you've rejected, buried, disowned. Jung warned, when a man's anima is unconscious, he doesn't fall in love with women. He falls into possession by them. That's the trap. You think you're choosing, but you're being chosen by the part of you that never healed. The deeper truth, you don't want her. You want the version of you she makes you feel like. The man who's finally enough. The boy who's finally held. The ghost who finally matters. That's not love. That's unconscious hunger. And hunger doesn't see clearly. It devours. Take a moment. Breathe. Because what we're walking into now is the territory most men spend their lives avoiding. The inner mirror, the female figure inside you, the anima, who runs your fantasies, your wounds, your desires. If you don't confront her consciously, Jung says, she will rule you from the shadows. And here's the kicker. Every time you fall for the one too fast, every time you feel obsessed, addicted, or devastated by a woman, that's not love. That's the anima hijacking your perception. She turns the woman in front of you into a goddess, a savior, a myth. Not because she is any of those things, but because your soul wants her to be. Because you can't hold your own chaos. So you look for someone who'll hold it for you. But no woman can. And when she fails to live up to your ideal, as she inevitably will, you don't just feel disappointed, you feel betrayed. Why? Because she shattered your mirror, and now you're face to face with your own emptiness. This is what Jung meant when he said, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But most men don't transform, they collapse. Because they've built their worth on someone else's reflection. And when that reflection fades, they're left with nothing. So what do? They chase it again. Another woman, another mirror, another projection. The cycle repeats, and they never meet the real woman, because they never met their real self. This is only the beginning, into how the anima seduces men into emotional dependency, how it fuels addiction to unavailable women, and why true masculine strength only emerges once the anima is seen, faced, and integrated. Because until then, you're not choosing love, you're being possessed by it. She doesn't even love you, but you can't stop thinking about her. You know it's wrong, you know it's one-sided, you know you're betraying your own dignity just by holding on, but still. You check your phone. You replay the conversations. You wonder what you could have said differently. And worst of all, you wait for the text, for the sign, for the hope that she'll finally see what you've known all along, that you were meant for each other. But let me tell you something Jung knew long before modern psychology caught up. This isn't love. This is emotional possession, not by her, but by the anima inside you. Let me explain. When a man hasn't integrated his feminine energy, the anima, he doesn't connect with real women. He connects with fantasy, but not the pornographic kind, the psychological kind, the dream of the woman who will complete him, soothe him, make him whole. And the moment he projects that dream onto someone, he's no longer in control. He becomes addicted, not to her, but to the feeling she temporarily gives him. And that feeling? It's not peace, it's intensity, obsession, longing, uncertainty. Sound familiar? Jung saw this dynamic everywhere, in relationships, myths, fairy tales, religion. The siren, the enchantress, the unreachable goddess, she draws you in. But she was never meant to be caught, because she's not real. She's your inner feminine, calling you inward, but you chase her outwardly onto women who can't carry your unlived soul. And when they reject you, you collapse. Because they didn't just leave you, they took your identity with them. Let's get brutally clear. When you fall in love with a woman who is emotionally unavailable, who confuses you, plays hot and cold, disappears without explanation, you are not being punished. You are being shown your inner state. You are experiencing, through her, your relationship with the rejected parts of yourself, your pain, your need, your wounded child. She didn't cause that. She triggered it. She lit up the part of you that still believes, if I can just win her love, I'll finally feel like I'm enough. But that belief, it's the drug, and she is just the dealer. Listen closely. This isn't about blaming women. It's not about anger, resentment, or revenge. It's about waking up. Because the woman you're obsessed with isn't the woman in front of you. It's the lost part of your soul crying to be seen. The moment you turn inward, seen, and meet your anima directly, something radical happens. You no longer need her love. You no longer beg for her presence. You no longer sacrifice your power for breadcrumbs of affection. You see the truth. She was never yours, because she was never real. And when that illusion dies, you are finally free to meet a real woman, not as a desperate boy, but as a whole man. She doesn't have to say a word. She just walks into the room, and suddenly your spine straightens. Your voice softens. Your focus scatters. You're no longer present. You're pulled into her gravity, into her silence, into that invisible force that makes you want to prove something. Why? Because deep down, she's not just a woman to you. She's the woman, the symbol, the dream, the mirror of everything you wish you were. Calm, whole, magnetic, free. And here's the problem. She can feel it, not consciously, not logically, but energetically. Women are biologically and psychologically attuned to emotional power, especially projection. So when a man walks in with wide, hungry eyes, when his nervous system screams, "See me, validate me, choose me," she may not know the theory, but she knows the leverage. Here's what Jung realized long before dating coaches or red pill podcasts. If a man doesn't own his inner world, a woman will do it for him. And often, without realizing it, she will use his own fantasies to control him. Not out of cruelty, but out of instinct. Because in a world where women have been denied overt power for centuries, they learn to wield symbolic power, not through domination, but through presence, a glance, a pause, a compliment given or withheld. And when she senses you're hypnotized, that you've placed her on the throne of your self-worth, she doesn't have to lift a finger. You'll perform, you'll chase, you'll abandon your values just to stay in her orbit. And here's the twist, she may not even want that power. But if you offer it, she'll take it. Because to her unconscious, it feels familiar, safe. Controlling love is safer than receiving it. Let's go deeper. What if I told you she's not trying to hurt you? What if she's protecting herself? You see, just as men project the anima, many women carry their own unresolved masculine shadow. The absent father, the cold boyfriend, the man who loved her with control instead of care. So when you show up, wide open, heart exposed, asking to be chosen, her nervous system flinches, because now she feels pressure, responsibility, vulnerability. And if she hasn't done her own inner work, she'll revert to control, not because she hates you, but because she doesn't trust love. So instead of receiving, she tests. Instead of softening, she withdraws. Instead of intimacy, she builds tension. So what happens next? You trying harder. She pulling further away. You becoming reactive. She seeing weakness, not depth. And suddenly love becomes war. Not because of who you are, but because of what you represent. You represent the part of her she's afraid to touch. And she represents the part of you you've never met. It's not two people relating. It's two archetypes colliding. Let me be clear. This is not about blaming women. And it's not about shaming men. It's about waking up. Because as long as you think she holds the power, she will. But the moment you remember that your longing is yours, that your worth was never hers to decide, that your presence doesn't need permission, the spell breaks. She's no longer a goddess, and you're no longer a servant. You're two humans finally free to meet without illusion. You say you want love. You say you want a real connection. No games, no masks, no fear. But here's the truth most people never admit. You're more afraid of being loved than being alone. Sounds crazy, right? But think about it. When someone truly sees you, not the version you crafted, not the mask you polished, but you, the insecure, chaotic, imperfect human behind the armor, it's terrifying. Because real love, it demands exposure, not performance, not seduction, not fantasy, raw, unedited, you. And we're not trained for that. From childhood, we're taught how to earn love. Be the good boy, be the strong girl, don't cry, don't need too much, make them proud. We're taught that love is conditional, that if you say the wrong thing, if you're too intense, too needy, too complicated, they'll leave. So what do? We protect ourselves. We become what Jung called the persona, the social mask that hides the chaos within. And then we fall in love, but only halfway. We let someone close, but not all the way in. Because if they really saw us, they might reject us. And that rejection, it wouldn't just hurt, it would confirm our deepest fear, that we are unlovable at our core. Here's the paradox. You long for intimacy, but sabotage it the moment it gets real. You attract partners who can't meet you. You pick people who stay just out of reach. Because if they're unavailable, you never have to be fully seen. It's safe. You get to chase, you get to try, but you never have to expose. Carl Jung wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." And that includes love. Real love is a mirror. It reflects back everything you haven't healed, every abandonment, every betrayal, every moment you felt too much or not enough. So what do? We cling to control. We keep one foot out the door. We call it boundaries. We call it standards. But often it's fear dressed as wisdom. Because to surrender into love, to risk being known, feels like death to the ego. Let me ask you something brutal. When was the last time you let someone love you without earning it? When was the last time you allowed affection without performance? When was the last time you said, "Here I am, flawed, unfiltered, still worthy"? For most, the answer is never. Because most of us don't actually want love. We want reinforcement. We want someone to tell us we're enough, so we don't have to believe it ourselves. But love doesn't fix you. It finds you and asks if you're ready to meet yourself. That's why relationships collapse the moment things get real. Because suddenly the game stops. The scripts fall apart, and you're left with nothing but your truth and their reflection. And unless both people are willing to sit in that discomfort, the whole thing burns, not because love isn't there, but because capacity isn't. So what's the answer? ShadowWork, The courage to see what you've hidden, to ask, what parts of me do I still disown? What version of myself do I think is unlovable? Why do I keep choosing people who can't meet me? And then, to feel it, not fix it, not journal it into oblivion, but sit with it until the armor melts. And when that happens, you stop seeking love as validation. You start receiving it as reflection. You don't need someone to fill your void because you've touched it yourself and realized you didn't die. You want to know the real reason your relationships fall apart? It's not because she changed. It's not because all women are the same. It's not even because you loved her too much. It's because you were never really in love with her. You were in love with what she represented, and she was just the screen. Carl Jung called this projection, the unconscious process of assigning your own inner wounds, needs, and fantasies onto another person. And nowhere is projection more intense than in relationships between men and women. You meet a woman, and she lights up something ancient in you. Maybe she's nurturing, maybe she's wild, maybe she's mysterious, maybe she simply sees you. And suddenly she becomes everything. Your salvation, your dream, your medicine. But here's the catch. She didn't become those things. You made her that way. In your mind. You needed her to be that because your own soul was starving. That's not love. That's a mirror screaming for attention. And eventually, it shatters. Because no real woman can carry your unmet needs forever. She grows tired. She pulls back. She becomes human, flawed, real, contradictory. And now you feel betrayed. But it wasn't betrayal. It was exposure. She never changed. Your illusion just collapsed. Jung warned us, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But you can't transform if you're still clinging to fantasy. You can't love a woman if you're still trying to complete your childhood through her. You can't build something real until you face the shadow inside you. The unmothered boy, the abandoned son, the silenced anger, the swallowed grief. You keep trying to fix it through her, and she keeps failing. Not because she's wrong, but because it's not her job. Let that hit. Because this is where most men quit. This is where they say women are manipulative. This is why I'll never trust again. They always leave. And they never see the real reason they're bleeding. They never grieved their first heartbreak. They never confronted their emotional dependency. They never asked, why do I need to be needed? Why does silence feel like rejection? Why do I lose my sense of self in love? They just run the loop, blame her, find another, repeat, and with each cycle, they get further from themselves. So how do you break the pattern? How do you stop seeing women as symbols and start meeting them as human? You go inward. You do the one thing you've spent a lifetime avoiding. You sit in your own darkness and stop expecting someone else to redeem it. You meet the boy inside who never felt chosen. You meet the rage you buried under logic. You meet the grief that leaks through sarcasm, and you say, I see you. I'm not sending you to someone else to carry anymore. That's the beginning of integration. That's the death of projection. Because when you stop using women to complete you, you can finally love them, not as mothers, not as saviors, not as reflections of your worth, but as wild, sovereign, complicated beings with their own shadows, their own wounds, their own chaos and beauty. You stop needing control because you're no longer afraid of losing yourself. You've already found him, your home. And here's what's wild. When you arrive at that place, women feel it. They stop testing, they stop pulling, they stop mirroring your uncertainty because you're no longer projecting your lack. You're radiating presence, and presence is magnetic. Not because it seduces, but because it sees, and we're all starving to be seen. So here's the brutal truth Jung left us with. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Stop calling it fate. Stop calling her the problem. Go inward, face the mirror, burn the mask, and maybe for the first time in your life, you won't fall in love with a fantasy. You'll stand in love with the truth, and that will change everything.